In this video, we're going to explore the process of first emerging into the world, growing into an adult, and then moving towards transcendence. So, as we enter into any individual culture or cult, we go from the unconscious circle, out of which all things emerge, into a asymmetrical hodgepodge of some kind, mix of different cultures over time, mix of the past that hasn't been updated, elements of insanity that are kind of induced to respond to other elements of insanity. For example, when you enter into the law of punishment and the law of shame that says certain things are shameful, number one, and two, then they need to be punished. What you create is insanity, because when you shame and punish people, they invariably create secrets to hide the shame. And so then you get insanity, because people are behaving as if this is true, but they're saying it isn't true. That's insanity. So you have all of these different mixes that we come in. But a cult, a culture, a program, a system is nonetheless necessary to awaken into our framework of consciousness. So we come in from the grace of the circle into the system of our cult. And as we violate certain cult taboos, we are often traumatized, shamed, punished into the box. And so we fill in this little box of the system. And we go through this as innocent children, feeling into what is it we have arrived into. Now, as we move into adolescence, we have gathered the evidence in childhood of all of the flaws, all of the asymmetries in the system. And we reject all of it. The sympathy, the unconditional acceptance of the child moves into the global rebellion of the adolescent. This is fucked up. It's not fair. You're all hypocrites. You're crazy. You're brutal. You're unkind. I don't belong here. I want no part of it. And in its best state, the adolescence details and nuances every flaw in the status quo, in their parents in particular, but the parents are the fractal microcosm of the cult, and so the adolescent lists the flaws in the system, in the code. And some people in our culture, where we don't initiate people, that's one of the flaws, stay in adolescence their whole life, rebelling, hating, resenting, cynical, just despising the part of themselves that's still part of the system and wanting no part of it. In other words, not moving beyond adolescence. Now, as we move through the adolescent stage to adulthood, adulthood is framed by synthesis. I'm going to accept pancakes. That was a good one. I liked pancakes. I liked Caesar salad. I liked automobiles better than bicycles. So I'm going to accept this part of the system. I'm going to reject this part of the system. I'm going to accept this part of the system. And I'm going to reject this part of the system. And I'm going to create something a little bit new. I'm going to innovate. I saw this person doing this and this person doing this, and I'm going to create a version of that that's more. I've never seen it, but I can imagine that's what I want. That's my system. Now, this is the contribution, the individual contribution to evolution. You've taken a little bit of code. You've looked at it. Okay, this, got this done, this done. It doesn't have this function. It would be nice if it had this function. This bit is confusing. We're going to delete this bit of code. And then we're going to re-release the app. We're going to re-release the cult in an upgraded operating system called individuality, called me. This is who I am. This is where I take my stand. I reject this, I accept this, I iterate this, and now there is a better system. That's called evolution. There's a better system, and it's a little bit more symmetrical. It's a little bit more intelligent. But as you can see, it still lacks the grace of the circle. What about this area over here? See, it's not addressed in the system. It's not addressed in your new upgraded system. What about over here? What about these sharp lines? You know, when you come to a point like this and then pivot like that, you know, and this is how simple operating systems kind of move through polarity. Polarity is a very difficult paradigm because you know, particularly in the chauvinism of polarity, it cuts the world in half. It's called the knowledge of good and evil. Half of the world is good and half of the world is bad. And so you move towards what you think is good, and it gets more and more extreme, and then you realize this isn't working. So then you flip and you move the other way, and it works for a little bit. As you move towards the center, you have this wonderful point of grace, and suddenly in the simplicity of extremism, you say, you know, it's all about exercise. It's all about making money. It's all about this. Whatever it is, extremism is about simple, one-directional movement. And then you go past the center, past the point of grace in geometry, and you start leveraging out further and further, and you realize if you just keep going here, it's going to get more and more toxic. All extremes are toxic. Too much salt, you die. Too little salt, you die. Too much water, you die. Too little water, you die. Too much heat, you die. Too much cold, you die. All extremes are toxic to us as an organism. And so there's this movement within the circle to a certain point, and then a pivot, and then a pivot, and a pivot. That's our system. But it's never a perfect system. No system is perfect. And the system of language is the system of human consciousness. It's an imperfect system. So the next step in our evolution is to master our system, is to perfect our system, to maybe make it a little bit more complex. We see some of these pockets, so maybe we design an overlay to fill in some of these. And now there's a little bit less void in the system. It's a little bit more complex. There's less pockets. And so we perfect our system. That's the next stage in evolution. However, as we move from adults towards spiritual adults, towards a relationship with all that is, the larger body out of which we emerge and of which we are all inextricably connected on multiple dimensions. This fingernail is connected to what's going on Mars, etc., etc. As we move into that awareness of the larger connection, we start to understand that our system, any system, is ultimately an impediment to understanding the innate interconnectivity of all things. We move towards the aspiration of transcendence. And this is moving beyond the new system. So we had no system. We entered a deeply flawed asymmetrical system. We rebelled against that system. We built a new system. We learned mastery within that new system. We added elements to that new system. But then the final stage is to realize in moments of grace, in moments of wordlessness, in moments of space and silence, that there are things that move beyond that system. And this is the path, this is the domain of transcendence. This is the region of the transcendent brain. And it feels more right, it feels more beautiful, it feels more true to soften the edges, to become more flexible, to start to see a whole new system, bigger than our own, more graceful than our own, more beautiful than we could have imagined. And this is the surrendering, not to the crudeness and cruelty of the cult system, not to the self-enamorment of our own system, but it is a deeper awakening from a place of strength, meaning our system is workable. It's flawed, it's painful, involves some struggle. It's hard to make those hairpin turns. Every time we come to these points and turn it, these straight points are easy in our life. Those are the flow points. Then we get to these hard pivots and head over here, and those points are hard. They're hard corners in our life. The system isn't working really well in those areas. And so these are the points when we question the system. Why does it have to be this painful? It doesn't. All systems carry within them a certain amount of friction, a certain amount of angular hardness. And the system is necessary for the illusion of the individual identity. It's necessary to create and sculpt that distinction. But it doesn't actually exist. We are part of a greater consciousness, of a greater whole, of a greater ecology. And that is the movement of softening and transcending. Now, it's important to go through the first several stages, because if you cannot function within a system, for example, you don't speak English, you can't earn money, you can't do this, you cannot move gracefully into transcendence. You get run over by a bus, you get evicted. It's too traumatic. But as you perfect and master and reach the pinnacle of your own created system, from that point, you have far less friction in the cult around you. And you can start to dream what's beyond. And the final liberation in this process is death, the leaving of the system. Energy is flowing along, it comes down into this complex process, and it comes back again. And in the beauty of stillness, in the beauty of silence, in the surrender to being, to allowing everything to be exactly as it is, to understanding the right place, that there is a framework, that there is a larger system that these eyes could not see. And in that larger system, it's all a breath. It's all a state of grace, of beauty, of surrender. This is the human experience. This is the journey. And it's why infants and our elderly offer our greatest insights. The honor that we show to infants and our elderly, those that are entering and leaving the system, offers an opaque, but there's a little bit of that light that comes in, of the true magnificence of existence. And so it is an honor to be near people in those times, to let that time be one of lingering, to linger before you lose that and come into language, to linger before you let the body go and enter and return to grace. Hi, I'm Dane Rose. All knowledge begins with a paradigm, and out of that paradigm comes an idea, an awareness that we adopt, reject, or synthesize into something better. It doesn't become wisdom, it doesn't become useful until we take action, until we integrate it into not only our thoughts, but our feelings, our body, our words, and our way of being. For that to occur, we have to move from the passive media paradigm into more active engagement. In the link below, in the More Information section, is an invitation to join a very small, deliberately filtered, high-quality discussion with a group of people who share a common language and want to work with these ideas, with me and with one another, with the sole goal of creating 10 times more sustainable well-being for ourselves and those around us per unit of energy invested. Thank you for watching.